So for this example, if you tried it out, our amplitude is still going to be 1. Horizontal shift, it's going to go right pi over 2. Period is 2 pi, and then it's going to shift up 1. So our midline is y equals 1 here. And our maximum then will be 2. Our minimum will be 0. And I need to label my point as shifting over pi over 2. So I know that first of all my period is 2 pi. Then this is pi over 2, 3 pi over 2. The next one will be 5 pi over 2. Then this will be 3 pi. The next one will be 7 pi over 2. And then this will be 4 pi here. We're shifting to the right, so I don't have to worry about the left side. It's sine, so it's going to start at the midline. And let's label our y-axis. This is 1, 2, 3, and this is 0. Sine starts at the midline, but we shift over right pi over 2. So instead of starting on the y-axis here, we're going to start here at pi over 2. Sine then goes up, then down, down, and then up. So just recognizing the pattern of sine. And here is our graph. Notice it's from pi over 2 to 5 pi over 2. Again, that is 2 pi. So our period is correct. Lastly, we're going to talk about reflections. And let's take a look at negative sine of x. Let's graph the parent function first, just so we can take a look at it. Label the pieces. So this is 2 pi, pi over 2, 3 pi over 2. I'll make this 1 and negative 1. So our parent function would start at 0 and goes this direction, correct? And so then it goes here. Whenever there's a negative, it's reflected over the x-axis. So for the reflection, it'll go here, and then it'll still stay there. And then it'll go underneath instead, then up, up, down. So now this new curve here, this is the reflection negative sine of x. So it goes in the opposite direction. So that is the green is the negative sine of x. For cosine, just taking a look at the parent function, let's label everything first. This is 2 pi, pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, 1, and negative 1. For cosine, we start at the amplitude of 1, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. So here is our graph of cosine of x. That's just cosine of x. And then in green, we'll do the negative cosine of x. And so instead of starting at the 1, you're actually going to start at the negative 1. So when you have a negative 1 for cosine, that's where you'll start. You'll start at that amplitude, negative 1. Then you go here at the midline, at the 0. Then you go all the way up. And it goes down to the midline and then down at the bottom. So instead of making a valley, it makes a hill. So here is cosine, negative cosine of x in green. So I'll do one example, graph negative sine of x plus 3. So we're just adding the piece of flipping it over. If you need to, you can always draw the parent and then start shifting it. But some of you will be able to see it and graph it immediately. So I'm going to draw my midline at 3. It's going to go up to 4 and down to 2. And then it's flipped over. So I know that sine, let me finish labeling the rest of my x-axis. So this is 2 pi, this is pi over 2, 3 pi over 2. And sine starts at the midline. Then it's negative, so that means I'm going to go down this sine instead of up. Then I'm going to go up at the midline, up at the top, and down here. So this is our graph of negative sine of x plus 3 here. So go ahead and try example 4. It's a shift to the right as well as a reflection, so starting to combine everything. And then we're starting to get to what you will see for graphing of sine and cosine is several transformations at once. So go ahead and try 5 and 6 as well. Pause the video and I'll have the answer for you when you come back. So here on number 4, I notice it's reflected and it goes left pi over 2. So I did my period of 2 pi first, then I moved it over also to the left, labeled to the left. It's a negative, so therefore it starts at the bottom at the amplitude at -1. And I just stretch a little bit so there's room. So we have -1, then we go back to the midline at 0, then up to the top at 1, and then down at the midline at pi, and then at 3 pi over 2. And that's a whole period. On the next slide, number 6, we have it's reflected, and then it's a vertical stretch by 2, and then it goes left pi and down 1. So I wrote that down here at the bottom. Reflected, vertical stretch by 2, left pi, down 1. So that might be something that you do. So you can double check to make sure that you did everything. So I'll double check after I graph it. Did I do everything I was supposed to? So yes, it's reflected. It's upside down. Is it a vertical stretch by 2? Yes. So it starts at the midline and it goes down 2 and up 2. Did I go left pi? Yes, it went left pi. And then did I shift down 1? Yes, my whole midline is shifted down 1. So I know for sure that I did every single translation I was supposed to. So let me do number 5 with you. And so it's reflected, I know that. And then I have to look at the period. So the period is 2 pi over a half. So remember when you have a fraction underneath, that you just multiply by the reciprocal. So it's 2 pi times 2. So that ends up being 4 pi. We also know that it's a vertical stretch by 3. So our amplitude is 3. And then we go up 2. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 shifts. 1, 2, 3, 4 shifts. Okay. And so let's do, I need to draw my midline at 2. My period is 4 pi. So this is 4 pi. Half of 4 pi is 2 pi. Therefore, this is pi, and this is 3 pi. I don't shift left or right any, so I'm okay. So since I'm not shifting left or right any, I'm going to go ahead and stretch this out just a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. So this will be 4 pi. Half of that will be 2 pi. This will be pi. And this will be 3 pi, just to stretch it out a little bit more. And then this will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0, and -1. So we know that sine starts at the midline. Then it's stretched by 3. So I'm going to go down 3, 1, 2, 3 at the pi value. Then it goes back up to the midline at 2 pi. Then it goes up 3. 1, 2, 3 at 3 pi, then it's back at the midline at 4 pi. So this is what the graph should look like. So let me take a look. Did I do everything I was supposed to do? So I have, it's reflected. Yes. Well, first of all, I graphed a sine, so I should always check that too. Graphed a sine, and then it's reflected, so it goes down. My period is 4 pi. Yes, period is 4 pi. Vertical stretch by 3. Yes, my amplitude is 3. Then I shifted it up 2, so my midline is at 2. So I am all done. Again, do the homework on paper so you get more practice in graphing, and then I will check it when we get back.